All right, kind of a somber tone yesterday at the Republican National Convention. Thom Serafin with us this morning. Obviously, all eyes were on Gustav, and all the network anchors were all down in New Orleans, so it kind of took the onus off. Is this hurting them at all, the Republican side, not having their full convention?
You know, I think in short term it hurts them because they don't get a foothold into the country's psyche. But Gustav was the #1 agenda item, and I think what it does is help the Republican Party internally. All of a sudden they realize emphatically John McCain is in charge of this party today. It's not George Bush. He made the call. He canceled. He's the one who turned it into a telethon. He's the one who visited down in Mississippi. I mean, he's in charge now.
Yeah,
Bush is gone.
It may help him maybe strategically, just the fact that he's distancing himself. A lot of people talking about change, of course, with Barack Obama, that he distanced himself from the president.
Right.
Is that kind of the goal of this whole thing?
Well, it was the goal, although the president was scheduled to speak last night.
Right.
But without the hurricane, he would have been there, and the party would have been identified breaking in the week with Cheney and Bush. So the irony of all ironies, one of the Democrats, you know, was caught on the airplane last week talking about, holy cow, I mean, you know, God's on our side because, you know, you have this hurricane and you can't get your convention off the ground. Everybody's going to be focused somewhere else. Fortunately, God was on the side of the people down there in New Orleans, and unfortunately, on the other side of the hurricane, a lot of people are going through a lot of rehab to this morning with their land and their psyche.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's talk about the other big story, and that was Sarah Palin's daughter's pregnancy that was announced yesterday. What impact, if any, is this going to have?
Well, it has a short-term impact, and I think it dents the Republican feeling of enthusiasm for her as vice president, but they got to get over themselves. And I think from a Democratic point of view, Barack Obama was absolutely correct. Hey, families have no place in this business. I've done dozens and dozens of campaigns, and I remember, you know, families were involved on the periphery, but we never went after the wives. We never went after the kids. I mean, it was kind of an unwritten rule. You leave the families alone. On this particular issue, Barack is correct. But unfortunately, the blogs on the internet are still going after.
Well, what do you think?
The bottom line is you can say all you want, and certainly Barack Obama can say, I don't want this involved, but the media is going to take on his life of itself sometimes.
Well, what's interesting about this, though, is you made a good point, and that is that if it's going to get nasty, it's going to get real nasty, and there's things in other people's closets also that we could pull out.
Well, if you're talking about the vice president and Sarah Palin has issues, then you go back to the issues that affected Joe Biden back in Iowa in '88, '87. I was there with Gary Hart, and all of a sudden the campaign blew up when he started taking other people's words and not attributing them, and he had to drop out of the race.
Plagiarism.
And then you go back to his the rumors and the issues that he had in college with other people's work that he was working with. So, I mean, you know, let heel without sin cast the first stone. That's what my mother always said. You know, let's talk about what we need to talk about and not talk about people's personal lives.
How will those two match up when it comes to the debates, Palin versus Biden?
Well, Palin is here today because she's not a weakling. I mean, she's going to go in there with a sense of testosterone. And Joe Biden has, you know, he's full of testosterone. He's going to be wanting to go at her very strong, very quickly, and, you know, frame her from the get-go. His people, his handlers will want to pull him back, and he's going to have to be very surgical and look for a spot. She's going to go in there trying to prove that she can match, you know, issue to issue with him, and she really won't be able to. She needs to kind of settle down, and if she can get past the first 10 minutes, I think she's going to be okay, but those first 10 minutes of that debate are going to be really telling on both sides. Bob Schieffer is the moderator. He's an old-fashioned, regular newsman who, you know, just calls it straight. So that could benefit Sarah Palin.
All right, Thom Serafin, thank you so much for joining us this morning.